What if everything you called a delay was actually a design? What if the silence you feared was the very space where God was rewriting your story? Today's message isn't for the ones who have it all figured out. It's for the weary, the ones who've cried behind closed doors, who've whispered prayers and wondered if they vanished into the void. If that's you, don't scroll. You didn't find this video by accident. Because today God is saying, it's time I tell you everything. And what he says next might just change the way you see your entire life. They almost buried you in silence, not in the literal sense, but in the unseen corners of existence, where pain lingers loud, but invisible, where hope is not shattered by tragedy, but quietly drained by the unnoticeable erosion of delay, disappointment, and feeling forgotten. That's where you lived. That's where I found you. I watched you walk through seasons that seemed stitched together only by unanswered prayers. You smiled in public but trembled in private. You told yourself to be strong even as the weight grew too heavy for your own shoulders. And though you didn't speak it aloud, your heart screamed one question over and over. Does God see this? You never stopped believing completely, but your belief changed. It became cautious. You prayed yes, but with lowered expectations. You trusted, but only in pieces. You kept showing up, but your soul started to wonder if it mattered. And when no thunder came, when no miracle burst through your ceiling, you whispered things even you barely admitted. Maybe I'm too broken. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I'm just unseen. What if I told you none of those thoughts came from me? What if the most dangerous thing in your life right now isn't what you lost, but what you started believing about yourself during the loss? I was there. Not watching from a distance, not too busy elsewhere. I was in the room when your strength gave out and your pillow caught what your words couldn't say. I was standing beside you when the doors closed and no one came back to check on you. I stayed when others left. I listened when no one else knew how to. And more than that, I remembered. Yes, I remember the time you said, I trust you, even when nothing in your world gave you a reason to. I remembered how you forgave when bitterness was justified. I remembered your silence when you could have shouted back. I remembered when you reached for me in the dark, unsure if I would answer, but you reached anyway. And now I have something to say. Not through another sign, not in another coded parable or vague whisper. This is not just another encouragement. This is the line in the sand. This is the moment the storm's roar begins to fall silent, not because it disappeared, but because it served its purpose. What you thought was meant to crush you was actually clearing the way for something divine. I know what the voices said, that you were late, that you missed it, that if anything was going to happen, it would have happened by now, that you should lower your hope to avoid further pain. But what if I told you the timeline they measured you by was never mine? You see shadows, I see roots. While you were focused on the fruit that never appeared, I was planting something deeper than you've ever known: resilience that no wind can uproot. There is something sacred about your story. It doesn't glitter. It doesn't demand a stage, but it glows quietly like embers that never died out. Your faith didn't scream, but it endured. And that's what woke heaven. You were never invisible. Every tremor of your heart has been recorded. Every internal war you fought while the world demanded composure has reached me. This is not exaggeration. This is not poetic comfort. This is truth sharper than pain itself. Let me make something clear: the tears you shed were not wasted. They watered the ground of your next beginning, because now we begin. This is the part where everything shifts, not loudly, not with fireworks, but in ways more permanent, more profound. I'm not talking about surface-level blessings or a quick answer to a temporary prayer. I'm talking about alignment. I'm talking about the kind of movement that reshapes your identity, not just your circumstances. Before I open what's ahead, you need to see what's always been true: I never left you. Every empty hallway where you heard only your footsteps, mine echoed beside them. Every moment you thought you were holding yourself together alone, I was the one holding you. You thought you were surviving, but I was preserving. And that ache in your chest that never quite faded, it was never a wound I ignored. It was an altar. It was where your trust burned quietly, refusing to go out, even when everything else did. You feared the silence meant I wasn't answering. But in truth, I was building. I was arranging pieces you didn't know you needed. I was silencing voices that would have derailed you. I was preparing ground that wouldn't shake when the time came. The lies that circled like vultures, telling you were too late, too damaged, too average. I'm exposing each one. They never belonged to you. They were imposters. They were sent to twist truth into something that kept you caged. But the cage is open now. You have permission to leave. I'm not just handing you a key for one moment. I'm giving you access to rooms you didn't even know existed. Rooms of healing, creativity, reconnection, rest. Rooms that remind you that survival was never the goal. Transformation was. You've persisted. You've believed without applause. And now even the air around you is starting to change. Can you feel it? The way peace is beginning to sneak into your routine? The way heaviness doesn't sit on your chest the way it used to? That's not coincidence, that's me. Don't look for flashing signs, don't wait for headlines. The most holy moves begin in whispers, and this is one of them. Do not shrink, not now. Do not lower your expectation to match your past disappointments. Do not quiet your voice to make others comfortable. You've been hidden, but not because you were unworthy. You were being prepared. I do not waste pain. I do not forget promise, and I do not start what I will not finish. You've wondered if your life would ever turn a corner. You've prayed for clarity while living in fog. Let me answer, now the clarity has come. Not all at once, but in pieces, like sunlight returning through blinds long closed. You will see what I've been doing. You will understand why it had to be this way, and you will testify not of how perfect you were, but of how faithful I've always been. This is your turning point. This is your divine summons. Walk forward, speak boldly. I will go with you, not just in word, but in power. The season of barely making it is over. Now you build. Now you rise. Now you live. Because I saw it all, and I never left. What moment in your life do you now realize God was closest to you? A. When everything fell apart and you didn't know who to trust. B. When you felt strong but couldn't explain why. Comment below with your answer, A or B. I want to hear your story. In the quiet valley town of Elbridge, where time felt slower and skies hung with a kind of solemn peace, you waited. You didn't mean to stay long. This wasn't the destination you envisioned, just a season you thought, a temporary place between dreams. But seasons stretched into years, dreams blurred into memories, and you weary soul began to wonder if time itself was working against you. But what if I told you that Elbridge wasn't a detour? What if this long, quiet chapter, this space you tried not to resent, was not where your purpose came to die, but where it came to deepen? You see, while the world whispered, they've missed their chance, I was kneeling beside you in the unseen, drawing a map with my own hand. One that defied clocks, one that turned delay into design. The world chases speed, heaven honors process, and while you waited, I worked. You watched others move forward, careers, launched relationships, bloomed dreams, seemingly fell into their laps, and you tried to smile while something inside you hollowed. Why not me? You asked me one late evening, standing barefoot on the cold wooden floor of your small apartment, hands gripping the windowsill like it could anchor you. You weren't angry, just tired, just confused. But I wasn't, because I knew what I was doing. While you felt stuck, I was sharpening you. There are some things that cannot grow in speed: wisdom, discernment, quiet authority, depth. These are not fast fruits. They grow slowly in the soil of stillness and surrender. That's why I kept you there. Not because you were disqualified, but because you were destined. You thought delay meant denial. But I say it again, every not yet from heaven carries precision, not punishment. I delayed the dream so I could prepare the dreamer. There was that relationship you wanted so desperately to work. You gave your heart, your hope, your trust, and when it unraveled, it felt like your prayers had gone ignored. But I protected you, not because they were evil, but because they weren't your match. Your heart would have shrunk in that connection. Your voice would have dulled. The spark I placed inside you would have dimmed to accommodate comfort. I didn't remove them out of cruelty. I removed them so you could breathe in your full design and remember that opportunity you almost stepped into. The offer that looked like a breakthrough, everyone said you were foolish to turn it down. Even you doubted your decision, but I whispered, wait. and you obeyed though it broke your heart. What you didn't know was the hidden cost behind that offer. It would have compromised your values bent, your spirit drained your soul. Elbridge, your valley season was never your cage. It was your greenhouse. In the stillness, I restored the foundation of who you are. I uncovered the core of your calling, the one not shaped by applause or position, but by inner conviction. That restoration couldn't happen on a stage. It needed silence. It needed wilderness. And I never stopped speaking. You just had to learn a different kind of hearing. Do you remember how you began to sense me in the smallest moments? The way peace would unexpectedly interrupt your anxiety in the middle of the night, or how one line from an old journal entry seemed to light up with meaning, or how you found tears rising for no reason during a quiet morning walk. That was me. I never stopped guiding. I just shifted the language, from big signs to gentle signals, from loud proclamations to holy whispers. Because if I could teach you to recognize me in quiet, then no chaos could ever drown me out again. The delays weren't wasted time. They were hidden lessons. The setbacks weren't failures. They were character lessons, disguised as closed doors. The silence wasn't absence. It was sacred shaping. I was forging something in you the world can't replicate, deep roots of trust, unshakable calm clarity that doesn't crack under pressure. And now as the new season begins to dawn, you'll carry what others can't buy. Quiet authority. But before I unfold what's ahead, you must let go of the shame you carried during the wait. That sense of, I should have done more by now, or I must have missed my window. Those are lies sent to keep you tethered to an expired storyline. I say this clearly, you are right on time. Nothing I've promised you has expired. Nothing you've walked through is wasted. You didn't fall behind, you fell deeper, deeper into who I made you to be. Now the ground beneath your feet has shifted. You feel it, don't you? A lightness that wasn't there before. An ease not of circumstances, but of spirit. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. In Elbridge, while no one watched your roots push deeper, your soul grew quiet, not because it gave up, but because it matured. Your questions didn't disappear, they transformed. You no longer need every answer to move forward. You just need the next step. That's faith. That's wisdom. And I can do more with one soul aligned than with 1,000 running in circles. So now you'll begin to see it. Tiny signs first. A conversation that sparks an old dream you thought had died. A door opening that had been sealed for years. A sudden rush of energy after seasons of fatigue. These are not random. They are the fruit of your yes, the result of your wait, the reward of obedience when nothing made sense. You will walk into rooms and find favor without explanation. You'll see why the timing had to be this precise. You'll bless me for the very delays you once resented. Because everything is connected. I orchestrated every friendship, every no, every hidden nudge you didn't understand in the moment. I knew that when the time came, you wouldn't just step into purpose, you would become it. Not as a performance, but as a quiet, living testimony. Now I have a question for you. Will you stop mourning what I never meant to give you? Will you stop calling delay what I call design? You've been faithful. You've stayed planted. You've learned to listen in the silence. And now the silence begins to sing. It sings of new beginnings. It hums with the melody of divine movement. But don't rush. Let it unfold. You don't need to chase the wind. The wind will carry you. You don't need to force open the door. The door will respond to your presence. You don't need to explain your journey. Your peace will speak for itself. Because when I build something, I make sure the foundation is secure. And you, beloved, are built solid, not by applause, but by obedience. Not by achievements, but by alignment. The next part will ask for your courage, but not the kind that screams. The kind that wakes each day with steady resolve, says yes to small steps, and trusts that I've gone ahead. The people around you will start to notice. They'll ask what changed. They'll wonder how you carry peace while others panic, and you'll know the answer. I turned your delay into design. So go, not with haste, but with honor. You are not behind. You are becoming. And everything I promised still stands. The morning sun broke differently over Elbridge this time. It wasn't louder or brighter, but something had shifted in the way the light settled on your skin. As you stepped outside and stood near the edge of the quiet river that carved its path through the center of the town, you didn't realize at first what was changing. but you felt it. Something in the air no longer pressed against your spirit. Something within you had stopped bracing for pain, because for the first time in a long while, you weren't trying to survive. You were becoming. You still remembered what it felt like to wake up and wear heaviness like a second skin. The invisible armor you had wrapped around yourself forged not from pride but protection. You'd been taught that vulnerability wasn't safe, that fragility was failure, that to keep moving even when your soul was limping was the most you could ask of yourself. But that was survival, and survival was never the goal. I never created you just to endure. The fire you passed through in Elbridge, the one that scorched your assumptions, burned away old hopes, left you stripped of what you thought defined you, it wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to refine. Because becoming always begins with letting go. Letting go of roles you never chose but wore out of obligation. Letting go of labels spoken over you by people who never saw the full you. Letting go of patterns that kept you stuck in loops of almost. And I watched as piece by piece you loosened your grip. You didn't even know you were doing it at first. But each time you chose forgiveness instead of fury, each time you paused before reacting, each time you stepped back to breathe, when fear said rush, you were becoming someone new, someone real. That was never weakness. That was transformation. There's a moment in every story where the tide turns not with trumpets, but with resolve. And today, I want to name it. This is your turn. The you who walked into Elbridge was tired, scared, and worn thin by the weight of pretending to be okay. But the you standing here now has eyes that have seen too much to doubt my hand anymore. You no longer need constant reassurance. You carry quiet evidence. I placed a fire in you that didn't fade even when the winds of despair tried to snuff it out. And now that fire no longer flickers timidly. It burns with purpose. You've moved from silence into voice, from bracing into breathing, from doubting into knowing. And here's the truth, no one told you loud enough, becoming doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks like crying on your living room floor, then getting up and making tea. Sometimes it looks like unfollowing someone who triggers comparison. Sometimes it's saying no without guilt, or saying yes to rest instead of hustling for approval. Becoming isn't flashy, it's faithful. And faithfulness, even in the ordinary, is heaven's favorite kind of worship. So now I am dressing you in something new. Not garments of striving, but robes of true identity. Not titles given by others, but a name I've called you from the beginning, beloved, trusted, sent. You're not waiting to become someone else. You are finally returning to who you've always been beneath the noise, the shame, the survival patterns. When you look in the mirror, you'll begin to see it. Not arrogance, not ego, but steadiness. A calm that doesn't need to defend itself. A light that doesn't shout, it simply stands. You'll stop hiding your voice in rooms that once intimidated you. Not because they became smaller, but because you finally saw yourself clearly. What tried to tell you you were too much or not enough has lost its grip. Because becoming doesn't ask permission, it arises. I will begin sending opportunities not to test you, but to fit you. Tasks will find you that feel like home to your soul. Conversations will open that don't drain you, but call out your clarity. Places that once felt too big will feel perfectly aligned. This is what happens when identity is no longer borrowed. You're not surviving your days anymore. You're shaping them. You'll notice it in the little choices, how you carry yourself in conflict, how you recover faster from disappointment, how you no longer chase what doesn't feel true. The past voices, the ones that told you you had to earn everything, that rest was laziness, that softness meant weakness, will grow quieter. Not because they disappear overnight, but because your truth now speaks louder. You'll still have days of doubt. That's not failure. That's humanity. But doubt no longer holds the final word. Courage does. And your courage is not loud. It shows up in the way you keep walking without applause, in how you carry yourself even when no one's looking, in how you speak truth not to prove but to bless. This kind of becoming cannot be faked. It's formed in fire. The fire of nights when you were tempted to quit but didn't. The fire of mornings when you got up with nothing left. The fire of choosing integrity when shortcuts begged for your attention. That fire has formed something unshakable. You are now walking into the part of the story where you get to use the key I placed in your hand, not as a token of arrival, but as a tool of unlocking. Unlocking peace in places still bound by chaos. Unlocking joy in others simply by your presence. Unlocking dreams long buried now, ready to be resurrected. You'll speak and things will shift, not because your voice is loud, but because it's aligned. You'll step into spaces that once ignored you and they'll welcome you. Not because you forced your way in, but because the room finally caught up with the truth you've quietly carried all along. Now I want to invite you to build something, not a platform, not a brand, a life. A life that reflects my heartbeat. A life that does not apologize for rest, that does not hide its healing, that does not waste pain but transforms it into paths for others. You've lived through storms not to become stormproof, but to show others what peace looks like when everything shakes. You've survived not to prove strength, but to display grace. You are no longer someone crawling out of the fire. You are someone walking with it. Let it shine. Let it warm others. Let it illuminate what fear tried to keep hidden. I am not asking you to strive. I am asking you to live boldly, to live fully, to live from identity, not for it, to live like Elbridge was not the end, but the womb, because now you are becoming, and the world is ready for what I placed in you from the start. Which truth feels more real to you today? I'm not just surviving, I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be. My fire didn't die in the valley, it refined me for what's next. Drop your answer in the comments, A or B. Let your story inspire someone. You never asked for a spotlight. In fact, if given the choice, you would have stayed hidden, quiet, unseen, unnoticed. Not out of shame, but because survival taught you to stay small. Stay safe. Don't attract attention. Be helpful, but not loud. Be present, but not too visible. Blend in just enough to avoid the sting of rejection or judgment. But that version of you was born from fear. And I didn't create you to stay in the background of your own life. In Elbridge, where the mist still curls gently around the rooftops each morning, where the townspeople move slowly but with purpose, something sacred has been growing in you, unseen by many but fully known to me. It's light. Not artificial or dramatic, but something forged in the fire of your valleys and refined in the silence of your waiting. This light isn't the kind that demands attention. It simply is. And when you walk into a room, it goes with you. People may not be able to describe it. Some might call it confidence. Others might feel a sudden peace. A few may even feel discomfort, not because you did anything wrong, but because truth always unsettles what pretends. But regardless of the reaction, your light matters. And it's time you stop dimming it. Let's speak plainly. You've spent years managing your impact to make others more comfortable. You've downplayed your insight to avoid sounding too deep. You've shrunk your ideas in meetings. You've withheld your truth from friendships. You've apologized for how intensely you feel things, all because you were taught directly or indirectly that your presence should be palatable, easy, soft around the edges. That humility means silence. That kindness means invisibility. But what I taught was never that. True humility is not hiding. True humility is knowing your source so well that you don't need to shout, but you also don't need to hide. When light enters a room, it doesn't argue with the dark. It simply changes the atmosphere. That's you now. And here's what you need to know. Influence doesn't always look like power. Sometimes it looks like walking into a space and watching the tension melt. Sometimes it's someone sitting beside you and saying, I don't know why, but I feel safe here. You are that safe place, not because you're perfect, but because you've made peace with imperfection. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're not afraid to hold questions with grace. The peace you fought so hard to find has now become a shelter for others, and you must not withhold it. Elbridge has taught you this. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to have a platform to be influential. You just need to be consistent. Consistent in how you love, how you respond, how you stay anchored when storms come. Because that kind of steadiness is what speaks loudest in a world addicted to noise. So here's what I'm calling you into: live your light. Don't edit your presence to fit shrinking rooms. Instead, enlarge the space by being fully, beautifully, honestly yourself. Let your laugh be deep. Let your silence be intentional. Let your boundaries speak honor. Let your story carry weight, not for your glory, but because someone else needs what you've come through. You've endured fire. You've tasted the ache of silence. You've felt invisible in rooms where you gave your all. But those experiences were never wasted. They were training. Because now I'm sending people your way. People who don't need a sermon, they need a sanctuary. And your presence will be that. You'll listen without fixing. You'll notice what others overlook. You'll speak only when needed, but when you do, it will carry weight that moves walls. And not because you planned it, but because you lived it. That's what makes your light unshakable. It's not borrowed, it's born. This is your calling now. Walk as one who carries atmosphere. When you enter a place, it should feel like the air just changed. Not because you demanded respect, but because you walked in fully aligned with the identity I gave you. You will not be everyone's preference, but you will be undeniable. That truth might cause some to retreat. Bless them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their withdrawal is not your worth. Stay steady. Do not shrink to preserve what was. Do not apologize for the clarity you now carry. You've walked through too much to play small now. You carry light and the world is desperate for it. Even those who resisted at first will come back slowly, quietly asking, how did you learn peace like that? And when they do tell the truth, tell them about Elbridge. Tell them about the years when silence was your only companion, when prayers went unanswered, when doors stayed closed. Tell them about the refining fire and the slow sacred becoming. Not as a badge of honor, but as a path. Because what I'm doing in you is not just for you, it's for those still hiding, still dimming, still wondering if their voice matters. You'll help them see it does not by preaching, but by being. Your stillness will teach others to rest. Your clarity will give others permission to question. Your presence will say to the weary, you're safe now. And that is how light spreads, not in bursts, but in breath. So breathe deeply, beloved. Walk confidently. Let your light speak. Let it disrupt darkness, not with argument, but with truth. Let it comfort the confused. Let it guide the lost. Let it settle those on edge. Let it spark something holy in those who forgot they were ever meant to shine. I've not just called you to carry light, I've called you to become it. So today, stand tall, not to dominate, but to anchor. The world doesn't need louder people. It needs truer ones. People whose words match their walk. People whose lives are quiet testimonies of grace. People whose very presence unsettles falsehoods and calms the weary. That is who you are now, not because you earned it, but because you allowed me to build it in you, brick by invisible brick, in the silence no one saw. And now the work is ready to be revealed, not for applause, but for purpose. Because when light stands, darkness always bows. Always. There are moments that mark you not with an exclamation, but with a quiet permanence. The kind that doesn't shout, but settles like a sunrise. That's where you are now. In the quiet town of Elbridge, where your pain once felt like a weight too great to name, now stands the sacred echo of something else. It's not finality. It's not a bow neatly tied on a difficult story. It's something better. Something bolder? It's the beginning. You thought the last page had been written. You thought the best chapters were behind you. You thought the ache you carried would be the closing scene of your story. But this isn't the end. This is the unfolding. The next steps won't look like they once did. The door opening in front of you isn't leading back into old rooms, familiar fears, or recycled disappointments. It leads forward, into legacy, into influence, into generational awakening. You've become something time can't unmake. And now everything in your story, yes, even the failures, even the heartbreaks, has gathered meaning. You see it now, don't you? The wisdom you didn't have when you were younger. The compassion that bloomed in you through hardship. The authority in your voice that wasn't taught, it was lived. And now I ask you to do something holy with it, plant it forward. You see, when I placed light in you, I never intended for it to stop with you. That's not how legacy works. That's not how kingdom spreads. Legacy doesn't begin when you die. It begins the moment you decide to live fully, fully alive, fully known, fully faithful to what I placed inside you. The town of Elbridge, this sacred, unglamorous place where your refining took root, will not be forgotten. It is where, generations before you prayed, prayers they never lived to see answered. prayers whispered on porches in hospital rooms and empty fields. And you are their answer. You thought your movement was for your healing, but it was also the response to what your grandmother once cried out in the dark. It was the echo of your father's buried dream. It was the unlocking of something your mother never dared believe for herself. You are the bridge between what was hoped for and what will be. And that's why I've been so patient. That's why the delay mattered, because now what's unfolding in your life isn't just a comeback story, it's a commissioning. You are stepping into a space designed for more than success. You are stepping into responsibility, sacred responsibility. The conversations you now carry will shape someone's choices. The peace you've cultivated will quiet someone else's chaos. The healing you wear will remind another it's possible. This is why I've entrusted you with this timing. Because the ground is ready not just in you, but around you. The ones who will walk with you aren't here to flatter you. They're here to walk alongside purpose. Expect new relationships that feel like divine intersections. Expect reconciliations that don't require explanation, only humility. Expect restoration not in grand gestures, but in sudden stillness. You'll notice it first in the way the air changes around you again. That same shift you felt when you moved from surviving to becoming will now take root in how others respond to you. It won't always be comfortable. Some will resist the light you carry. Others will misunderstand your peace. But that's not your burden. You're not here to convince, you're here to become. And as you do, those ready for their own awakening will find your life like a lantern, not a spotlight, but a steady, reliable flame in a world gone frantic. Your task now is not to build a stage. It's to build a table. Invite others into your peace. Speak when prompted. Rest when needed. Live so rooted in me that nothing shakes you, so that others will wonder what anchors you. Because from now on, even your silence will carry message. Even your rest will carry resistance to the culture of burnout. Even your ordinary days will echo with extraordinary weight. And that brings us to one more truth: dreams you buried are stirring again. Not in the old form, but renewed, refined, resurrected. You're remembering ideas that once made you feel alive, projects you shelved, prayers you stopped praying, desires you deemed too late. You thought you'd outgrown them or that they had expired. But what actually happened is this: the dream grew roots while you grew wisdom. Now the time is right. Now the door will open with less striving and more surrender. Now your hands are ready to hold what once overwhelmed you. You won't need to prove yourself to step into it. It will feel like home, because it was always meant for you. And when the breakthrough comes, and it will come, it won't shout. It will arrive with the same peace that's been shaping you all along. That's how you'll know it's me. No pressure, no rush, just presence. This next chapter doesn't require a performance. It requires presence. Not perfection, just alignment. And you are aligned now more than you've ever been. You walk with a wisdom that no course taught you. You carry a compassion that came through the cost. You wield a peace that cannot be manufactured. And from that place, this place, I am giving you something most people never receive: a legacy in real time. You won't have to wait for others to recognize it. You'll live it, see it, feel it ripple outward. You'll hear your words come out of someone else's mouth days or months after you spoke them in passing. You'll watch strangers shift in your presence without knowing why. You'll notice peace in your home, joy in your daily rituals, and strength in decisions that once paralyzed you. This is fruit, real, lasting, God-grown fruit. And I say to you, now guard it, but do not hoard it. The generosity of your spirit is the doorway for others. What healed you will heal others through your sharing. Don't make it a performance. Make it a pattern, a way of being, a rhythm of living. And when fear rises, as it sometimes will, return to Elbridge, not as a place to mourn, but as a place of remembering. Walk again through the streets in your memory, the cracked sidewalk near the chapel, the stone bench by the willow tree near the river bend. Remember what was born in you there, not just survival, but clarity, not just healing, but commissioning, not just restoration, but rebirth. You are not only walking into blessing, you are becoming one. You are not just stepping into light, you are the light. And no one can unmake what I have made new. So go not for fame, not for praise, but for legacy. Your presence will write permission into the lives of many. Your story will become a chapter in someone else's rescue. Your obedience will echo far past your own lifetime. This is the unfolding, and it's only just beginning. What part of your legacy are you stepping into today? A. I'm living my healing out loud to give others hope. B. I'm revisiting dreams I thought were lost, this time with peace. Comment your answer below, A or B. Your breakthrough might be the key someone else has been praying for. Before you scroll away, take a breath. Let these words settle into the deepest part of you, because they were never just words. They were reminders that you are not forgotten, that every delay had purpose, that the light inside you is real, unstoppable, and ready. If something in your heart stirred, if a memory surfaced, or a quiet yes rose in your chest, then don't keep that moment to yourself. Someone else out there is still in their valley, still in their silence, still wondering if it's too late. You sharing this might be the moment they finally hear you're not alone. So drop a comment, share your answer, tell your story, because your voice matters more than you think. And if this message moved, you share this video. Not for numbers, not for noise, but for impact, for healing, for legacy, because when one light shines, another finds the courage to rise. And that's how movements begin.